Hello, renewers. God bless you. Thanks so much for supporting this ministry. A little update on how things are going. One of the things that I've been doing as I'm networking with this movement that's going on around the world is I'm in contact with a number of people from different denominations, different organizations, and we're together collaborating on creating this. We eventually want to have to be a global map where we can have organizations and churches and house churches and individuals who ascribe to this vision of the kingdom, a Jesus-looking God raising up a Jesus-looking people, and we'll have a sort of theological way of vetting them, where they can register on this map, so we can begin to find out who around us shares this vision and who else is maybe looking for fellowship and all sorts of stuff. We want to be resourcing these groups, helping them start their own little house churches and things like that. This will be so cool. It's probably a year out still, because it's quite an elaborate thing to create. But I think this is going to so help begin to transform this very amorphic thing that's going on into an identifiable movement. It'll be great. So stay tuned for that. So now, I last month noted how Paul Copan and Matthew Flannagan argued that Jesus did not absolutize the love command. I argued that, in fact, he did absolutize it because the command is based on the nature of God, not on the worthiness of the people we're called to love. And when Jesus says enemies, folks are thinking Romans, and the Romans are the worst kind of enemies there are. So if they're not exceptions to the love command, there ain't no exceptions to the love command. So they give some examples that they think illustrate that Jesus at times condoned the use of violence. The first example they give, and this is the first example everyone always gives who tries to argue this, has to do with Jesus' cleansing of the temple. You find this in all four Gospels. In John, it's placed at the beginning of his ministry. And John is usually the one cited because he mentions that Jesus went out and got cords and made a whip, and then turned over the tables and drove the animals out of the temple. And that's cited as an example of Jesus using violence. I submit to you that it implies no such thing. First, it's important to note that Jesus was not throwing a tantrum here. This was not just a mad outburst. Scholars agree that it was a very deliberate, calculated, premeditated act whereby Jesus was fulfilling some messianic expectations that you find in the Old Testament, that the Lord would come and renovate the temple and remove its corrupt leadership and things like that. So this was a messianic move. This was, one scholar calls it stage theater, street theater. And so it was there to make a point. He was also intentionally provoking the leadership of the temple because this was the week he was going to be arrested. And by doing this, he was ensuring that, in fact, it says in John that they went out and started to calculate how they could arrest him. But the more important point even is this. Yes, Jesus made a whip, and this was an aggressive move, no doubt about that. But neither John nor any of the other gospel authors imply that Jesus used that whip or anything else to act violently towards people or even towards the animals. Cracking a whip has always been, in culture throughout history, has always been the main way that you control the movement of animals. And so by cracking a whip, Jesus caused an animal stampede, and that's how he directed them out of the temple. There's no violence insinuated there whatsoever. I submit to you that this was, in fact, a loving act. In fact, I think everything Jesus did was motivated by the kind of love that's revealed on the cross, which is why the cross is the thematic center of everything Jesus was about. It was loving in that, he's trying to wake up the religious leaders to the corruption that they're involved in. I think he's doing this with the hope that these religious leaders, at least some of them, will repent. It was loving to the crowds because the crowds were being oppressed by these leaders. They had this unjust system of buying and selling these animals, and it wasn't loving to the crowd. So he's doing the crowd a favor, a loving expression towards them. And it was loving primarily in that by confronting the leaders in this way, Jesus was ensuring his crucifixion. And John makes that very explicit. In fact, then John draws out even a stronger connection to the cross when he has Jesus give this teaching about how you destroy that temple will be destroyed, but you destroy this temple in 3 days, it will be raised again. And so he's weaving the cross into this theme. But the whole confrontation moves him towards the cross. It's on the cross where Jesus gives his life for everybody, including the corrupt religious leaders of this temple. So this event, like all events in Jesus' life, like all of Jesus' teachings, are motivated by the kind of love that's revealed on the cross. This episode certainly does not represent an illustration of Jesus condoning or engaging in violence. Think about that. next week or next month, I'll come to you. We'll talk about Jesus' harsh words towards the Pharisees. All right? See you then. Bye-bye.